In my attempt to preserve the tube chart inside the RCA, well, it didn't work out too well. Well, in fact, I just couldn't release it from the inside of the cabinet. So I resorted to taking a few pictures of it just in case, and I'll keep those with documentation, and I'll cut one of the pictures out to precise size as the original one, and in case the original one would be destroyed, I will glue this one instead to the inside of the cabinet. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I can't help it. I tried my damnedest to get it out of the cabinet, but it just didn't work out. And would I have persisted, it would have been seriously damaged beyond recognition. So I'm going to use another trick instead, and I'm going to use the following trick. I'm going to use this adhesive transparent, well, I would say plastic, and I'm going to cut a square of this plastic, which I'm going to stick over the label you see over there. Now, the reason why is normally the preferred way would be to use transparent lacquer to preserve the label, but since I'm going to use a paint remover like this on the body or the cabinet of the RCA, well, using lacquer would be totally out of the question, since paint remover will obviously also remove lacquer. So what I'm going to do next is cut a piece of this folia and stick it on top of the label. And there you go. I cut a piece of the folia, and lucky for me, there are some squares printed on the back paper of the plastic, which will allow me to position it rather precisely over the label. Now, the way I'm going to proceed is to unpeel one side and then stick it in the exact right position over the label, and then slowly unpeel it as I press down and rub over it with my thumb to press all the air out from between the label and the plastic folie. Okay, so here we go. Okay, and you can see how I'm doing it right now. So I folded over the paper edge of the wrap. You could say it's a sort of a sticking wrap, which I'm wrapping over the label. As you can see, I already did about half. So what I do is I gradually pull the paper away like this, then I fold it over like that, and I press with the flat of a finger over it to press out any air bubble that might be trapped beneath it. Yeah, and then I pull away some of the paper again, and then I repeat the process. So that's what I'm going to do now for the next few minutes. I applied a thick layer of you could say a gooey gray stuff on the paint, and according to the instructions, I should leave it on for about half an hour, wrapped in plastic like you see right now. So I'm following the instructions to the letter, because this is actually the first time I'm removing paint from a metal case. So I'm curious to see what the result will be. They say that after half an hour I should scrape away any paint and rinse copiously with water. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So now starts the waiting game. Although they advise to leave whatever you treat with that paint remover for about half an hour, I left the cabinet of the RCA TV for well over an hour under that cover of thick gooey gray paste, which I smeared all over it, and in certain spots it's quite visible what the paint remover's effect is. See, actually the paint peels right off, just like that. See, it simply becomes a paste which you can scrape off with a knife, like I'm doing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull on a few gloves and scrape away at the paint. Well, and this is a result after, say, 20 minutes of scraping. I would say 85% of the paint has been removed. Now, unfortunately for me, I will probably need to give the cabinet a second pass with paint remover, because apparently in some areas on the cabinet the paint was thicker than on others, or perhaps it was applied in a better way. Yeah, the substrate had been prepared rather well so that the paint adhered better. In any case, like I just said, unfortunately I'll have to give the cabinet a second pass with the paint remover, but it seems like the product does a rather nice job at removing the paint, as you can as the remains of the paint testifies. So it's a pretty thorough product, but it stinks like hell, and I would advise strongly against using it indoors. So whenever you use a product like this, do it outside, yeah, because you really need to breathe clean air while you're working on this product. Oh, by the way, I did try the paint remover on the stand of the TV, and actually nothing came off. So I'm sort of a little bit stumped here, because I can see clear traces of rust on the stand, unless it is grime of some kind. And yet, if this were painted steel, then the paint would come off, wouldn't it? Now, there is of course another possibility, which is that the steel is copper plated, or even gold-plated, I don't know. In any case, I'll investigate once I have enough daylight again, because right now it's 9:30 in the evening, so it's getting dark rapidly now, so I should stop for today. And first thing tomorrow morning, what I'll do is, well, like I said, give the cabinet a second pass with paint remover, and then I'll sand any rusty areas like this, for example, and clean it off. And once it's sanded and cleaned and repaired wherever necessary, then we'll give it a base coating with primer. One final remark before I sign off for the evening. I would really insist, if you use a paint remover like I've been using, to do it outdoors, or at least in a well ventilated area, because you need loads of fresh air to remove the toxic fumes. Well, and this is the pile of paint that I removed, and well, it's quite a lot of paint actually. Unfortunately I needed to subject the cabinet to 2 passes of paint remover, so 1 pass was unfortunately not enough. Now take a look at this. And this is the cabinet and the button cover actually. So I cleaned it a bit. I still need to clean it a little bit more, but essentially this is the result. I wouldn't say perfect by any means, but it's not too bad. Now there is something strange here. Look at the cover, the button cover. And it looks a dull gray, and it weighs suspiciously much for just a little cover like this. So actually I'm starting to think this cover is lead or something like it, maybe tin, I don't know, but it weighs a lot, so I wouldn't be astonished this is actually, well, almost pure lead. Strange choice of material, but it has one advantage for me. It doesn't rust. Of course, as we all know, lead is poisonous, so when I'm going to repaint it, I'm going to give it a real good layer of primer to seal it in. But I still need to give it a second cleaning, you know. Right, then we move on to the stand of the TV. Now, I applied some paint remover to it, and it essentially didn't change. So what I think it is copper plated steel, actually. Unfortunately, the copper layer has been damaged over the years, so well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Either leave it as it is or paint it and then put a layer of lacquer on top of it. I don't know, I'm undecided as yet. And then we have the cabinet itself. Now here too I removed about 99% of the paint. There are still some tiny spots that need cleaning, like here, but essentially it is well, paint free. There are some odd details emerging now that the paint is removed, And probably the oddest thing that I discovered is this. Take a look at that right there. Now that is a piece of plastic, or so it seems, that has been glued to the inner edge of the buttonhole. Why would they have done that, I wonder? Well, maybe because it's close to some high voltage component? I wouldn't know. But it's weird. You know, the whole cabinet is metal, and then you have one single plastic piece. Right, and then the label, and this is troublesome. Well, you can tell the label has become sort of cloudy, not very visible any longer. So, and the same goes for the bottom label over there. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm undecided as well. I might leave it in, or I might remove it, or maybe stick a copy of the label on top of it. I don't know yet. In any case, what I'm going to do now is let it dry and then give it a final thorough cleaning. Now, of course, the cabinet is starting to rust, and that is normal, of course, since I removed all the paint and it is just plain steel. So once all the paint has been removed, even to the slightest little speck of it, I'm going to give it a cleaning with rust remover, you know, navel jelly. And the point is, once I do that, I will need to move fast, and I mean by fast I mean really fast. So within 5 or 10 minutes at most, I will have to clean off the navel jelly and then give it a primer coating. Because if I do not and I wait a bit longer, it will just start rusting all over again. Unfortunate, but that's what it is working with steel. Right, I treated the cabinet of the RCA with navel jelly, and I'm waiting for the jelly to do its work, and it seems to be doing something, but really I don't know whether I used not enough jelly or whether this yellowish product that appears is the result of the jelly working. I don't know. In any case, I think I will add a little bit more jelly to the surface and see whether that helps to clear away the layer of rust, well, what I presume to be rust. Well, the navy jelly did its work, and the cabinet is completely stripped of rust, and I'm waiting for it to dry because I washed off the last remnants of the navel jelly of the chassis, or I should say the cabinet. And I'm just going to repair with a hammer carefully a little ding here. You know, there's a dimple in here, so obviously the cabinet hit something heavy right here. So I'm going to repair it with a hammer, you know, tapping it gently and bending it straight again. And I might even do the same thing here to this corner here. And when that is done and the cabinet is dry, I'm going to clear coat the inside of the cabinet. Anyway, nobody is going to see the inside of it, and well, I'd like to preserve a little bit of the history of the cabinet. So by clear coating it on the inside, people will get a pretty good idea of what it must have looked like when it was made in the factory. The outside, on the other hand, I'm going to give a primer layer, neutral gray, and once that is done, I'm still struggling a bit what kind of black to use. Either a matte kind of black, you know, satin, or a really shiny kind of black. I'm sort of two minds about it. I'm leaning more to the matte black, you know, the satin black, instead of the glossy black. But okay, I still have a little bit of time to think about it. Let's just coat the interior first. And there you go, a first layer of primer. Obviously this is not going to be the only coating I'm going to give the cabinet. I will definitely have to give the cabinet a second coating. Unfortunate, but well, that's the way it turns out to be. I've got no choice. And anyway, there are some imperfections in the first coating of primer which need to be sanded away before I give it a second layer. So it's not such a big deal actually. So all I need to do now is wait patiently for the first primer layer to dry, which will take, I guess, a full day. So I'll only be able to give the cabinet a second coating tomorrow. Unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Well, there you go. It's painted in matte black, and I think I will keep it matte black because it really looks nice, and I think originally it must have been matte black as well. So well, I still have a little bit of time to consider it. I might still change my mind and put satin lacquer on it. We'll see. But until now, the result is really, really nice. Well, the cabinet is ready, and as you can see, the result is quite satisfying. I chose for matte black with a layer of matte lacquer. I chose matte because the original color, which you see on the tripod, is matte itself. Okay, maybe it's half satin, half glossy. It's difficult to say because this is, you know, this is the old color of paint, but the texture of the paint is quite the same, which I managed on the cabinet, the new paint layer, as it were. So I'm really happy with that. Now I'm going to repaint the bezel, and I gave it a layer of primer, which is drying right now. And in fact, it turns out that the primer, the color of the primer, is almost exactly the same kind of light gray they used for the inner part of the bezel. So that turns out perfect. Now, the reason why I decided to paint the bezel anyway is because the original bronze color gold or bronze color which they use for the bezel was heavily pitted and was too dirty to be salvaged. So I'm going to give it a new layer of bronze covered with lacquer, but that lacquer will be glossy and not a matte kind of lacquer. And then I'm putting the final touches on the button cover. The only thing that needs to be done with it is to give it a layer of matte lacquer, and then that will be finished as well. And once that is all done, so the bezel and the button cover, then we can put it all back together again. I was getting a bit ahead of myself in the sense that, well, I still need to polish a little bit the grip, which seems to have faded a bit, so it's not as black as it used to be. So that needs a little bit of polishing. And I still need to repair the antenna cover, which, as you know from the previous episodes, is slightly broken on top, as you can tell. So I still need to clean this and repair it.